Adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act pursuant to Public Law 1975, Chapter 231. Said notice was published in the Home News Tribune on mycentraljersey.com on January 22nd, as well to the Star Ledger for informational purposes. Said legal notice is also posted on the Borough of Metuchen bulletin board and borough website under legal notices. All requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act were satisfied. Okay, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And Bob, would you lead us off, please?
Certainly. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you all. Joanne, can we have roll call, please?
Yes. Ms. Clarkson? Here. Ms. Cohn? Here. Mr. Delia?
Here.
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Ms. Gelber? Here. Mr. Grossman?
Here.
Ms. Koskowski?
Here.
Mr. Lifton? Mr. Love? Mr. Westrick? Mr. Coughlin? Ms. Zachariah?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, we declare a quorum present. Thank you for coming out on this unpleasant evening. So the first thing on our plate tonight is the adjournment of 25-1437E, which we talked about last time. Bob, what's the story? Kicking it down the curb again?
Right, what date are we carrying that to?
March 19th.
So if you are here on the Brunswick Properties LLC application 25-1437E, that will be carried to, I already forgot what she said.
March 19th.
March 8th, March 19th. March 19th, in this chambers at 7:30 PM. There will be no further notice.
Thank you, Bob. Okay. And then the next up, we have Resolution 25-1401E, which is for 247 management, which some of you may recall if you were with us at our last meeting. Or any discussion about anything that might need to be amended or corrected. Chair will entertain a motion on the resolution. Motion to adopt the resolution?
I make a motion to approve the resolution.
Okay, can I have a second, please?
Second.
We have a second. Joanne?
Yes. Ms. Clarkson?
Yes.
Ms. Cohn?
Yes.
Mr. Delia?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Ms. Koskowski?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes. Very good. The resolution is successful. Thank you. And then for our new business for the evening, ordinance 2026. I see we have more than one to discuss this evening. So, Bob, would you like to give us a primer perhaps, or do you want to?
Sure. Let's start with ordinance number 2026-04. So, as you know, last year in June, I think it was, we passed the affordable housing plan for this year, and part of the plan, I'm actually skipping to the next two, part of the plan was that 12 and 16 Pearl Street would be part of or designated as a redevelopment area, and that the property at 303 Amboy Avenue would be merged into the Metuchen Arts District redevelopment area. So you'll have in front of you, let's start now, I'll bounce back to 2026-04. This is the new affordable housing ordinance for the Borough of Metuchen. So we're repealing all of the prior affordable housing ordinances, including the affirmative marketing ordinance, and replacing them with this ordinance. This ordinance is a model ordinance that was prepared by the Association of Housing Professionals of New Jersey. It was approved of by Fair Share Housing Center, and we've there were some choices and adaptations, but basically, we are enacting the model ordinance. So the governing body has passed that ordinance. It's referred to you, as you know, under the municipal land use law. Any land use ordinances get referred to the planning board for review for consistency with the master plan and any other comments that you may have. Usually when we review them, and if there is no objection, we recommend that they be adopted. The other two ordinances, again, are for Pearl Street and Amboy Avenue. Chris will tell you a little bit about the redevelopment plans for those two areas. As I indicated, the planning board has already approved of these as part of the housing element and fair share plan that was adopted. The governing body endorsed the housing element and fair share plan that included these items. The governing body has now introduced an ordinance adopting these two redevelopment plans. And again, under the local redevelopment and housing law, similarly to the land use law, any redevelopment plans and the ordinances adopting them are referred to the planning board, again, for consistency with the master plan and for any recommendations. And of course, the housing element and fair share plan is part of the master plan, so it's pretty much by definition, it's consistent with the master plan because it's been already adopted by us. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if you're ready and the board's ready, we'll have Mr. Cosenza do a presentation.
Sounds like a plan. Right, Chris? Ah, there you are. You switched sides tonight.
Thank you, Bob. Should we start with the first ordinance or the set-aside ordinance?
The affordable housing ordinance, I don't really think that it's a 50-page ordinance.
Oh, well, I was going to say that the only change to the land development ordinance is what the board is charged to review, is that we're actually removing it from the land development ordinance.
Right.
So, technically, you're not reviewing anything.
Right.
It's being recodified into a different chapter outside land development.
Correct.
That way, it's a more permanent place for it, and in theory, that means the planning board and zoning board can't grant variances from it, which
Right,
actually
which
gives.
they couldn't anyway, but we decided to move it so that that would be made clear that you can't, in other words, the affordable housing regulations or the affordable housing regulations, if somebody's required to put so many affordable units, they can't be changed. But again, it's a 50-page ordinance. I don't think you want me to go through it line by line.
Sure, I don't want you to go through that.
Yeah, so it's not inconsistent with the master plan because there's nothing to review from a land use perspective. So shall I move on to 12 and 16 Pearl?
Please?
Please do. Okay, so since 2024, so almost 2 years, the borough is working with the property owner, Maine Pearl LLC, regarding a concept plan. So at that time, we were negotiating the design of the building and how many units, set aside requirements, et cetera. And that's why at the time of preparing the housing plan in June of last year, this was a concept that we decided to move forward at the time. And since then, we have gone to produce the redevelopment plan. This is what you're reviewing. So the Borough Council adopted a resolution designating the property owner as a conditional redeveloper that enabled them to set up escrow to basically pay for my time to prepare this redevelopment plan. So in terms of context, it's generally in the center of the borough, middle downtown, fronting on both Main Street as well as Pearl Street. Looking further, this will be the two historic Main Street buildings on the bottom of the image by the crosswalk. The red roof building, which is an auto body shop, and the blue office building. But those two buildings, the red roof building and the office building, have since been demolished. So these are the two buildings fronting on Main Street, the Hanneman's Bakery and the Buttery Bake Shop, as noted as historic sites in the Metuchen's historic preservation plan element as part of a concept of a historic district, Maine and Amboy, back in 1979. and another survey in 1990. This is a view looking from Pearl Street, basically by the corner of the parking deck, towards the site. You can actually see some shadow. That's my son on my shoulders. I was taking some photos. So he enjoyed our little walk. And I actually had to go back and take photos and actually change out the photos on the cover because at the time you saw the building was still there. So just within days, the building's demolished. So the site's clear, and you can see how large it is. It's pretty remarkable. So in terms of planning activities, this actually started back in 2016, looking in terms of just general redevelopment and reactivation of the borough's downtown. And one of the recommendations in the master plan was, well, two of them, was to prepare a vision plan and utilizing redevelopment where it made sense. Back in 2019, starting in 2019, 2020, the Borough Council declared the entire borough as a rehabilitation area, which enabled to do site-specific redevelopment plans without having to do a redevelopment study in certain cases, which means that the whole town's a whole rehabilitation area. That makes this project area a rehabilitation area as well. In 2020, probably a month later, a redevelopment plan was adopted for the entire town, which all it really did was incorporate the underlying zoning. But by having the plan in place, you are able to engage with potential redevelopers. They can set up escrow. That way they pay for redevelopment planning. Whereas if you don't do that, that means the borough takes it on, the cost of preparing plans. So that's a recommendation by Jim Maley's office, Maley Givens. So it's actually very useful to kind of control the costs of planning. And as Bob indicated, June last year, Housing Element Fair Share Plan was adopted, and we're here now to basically be required to adopt those ordinances of those sites that we promised would be developed as a realistic need for affordable housing. In terms of the process, we've done this many times. So we start with, after the site is designated, in this case, the site's already designated as a rehabilitation area, you go through a process of a redevelopment plan. Here, the authorization to do a plan is through the Borough Council, and they can do the redevelopment plan themselves and send it to the planning board, or they can direct the planning board to prepare a redevelopment plan. In this case, they prepared a redevelopment plan, and I did it on their behalf. We're sending it to the planning board for review with the master plan, and then it goes back to council for a public hearing and adoption, and at that point it becomes adopted. Similar to a land development ordinance, goes to council, planning board review, back to council for adoption. Just in certain statutory requirements of the redevelopment plan in accordance to the local redevelopment housing law. These are 8 requirements. Generally speaking, its relationship to the local master plan, its proposed zoning requirements, and several items about relocation of housing units, identification, and a plan for relocation of housing units. Relationship to contiguous municipalities, in which case it's just Edison, the county, as well as a state plan, and finally, a plan for zero-emission charging infrastructure. That last requirement was added a few years ago as an amendment to the local redevelopment housing law. Planning board's role is, again, similar to a land development ordinance, in that case where you would determine whether the ordinance is not inconsistent with the master plan. In this case, it's actually whether the provisions in basically the zoning standards in the redevelopment plan shall be either substantially consistent or designed to effectuate the master plan. And the planning board, within 45 days of referral, is supposed to provide a report, which is usually a resolution. So the purpose of this redevelopment plan for 12 and 16 Pearl, like many others, is a very specific, site-specific redevelopment plan for mixed-use development fronting on Pearl Street. And yes, it did include the parcels fronting on Main Street, and I'll explain what's happening there. Well, actually, it's the third bullet point. So we're going to be preserving and integrating those historic Main Street buildings into the plan with no changes. Otherwise, this site is a classic case of a TOD. It's a transit-oriented development near Pearl Street parking garage, literally across the street. And within walking distance, you can actually crawl to the Metuchen train station at this point. The idea is to convert the existing Main Street driveway into a pedestrian alley and outdoor area, or dining area for that matter. And as Bob indicated, since this is part of a plan for affordable housing, obviously we're meeting the borough's goal to provide for affordable housing. In terms of the existing land use, the brown indicates the site's vacant, so I had to change it at the last minute because it used to be office and auto service, so now it's vacant land, except for, of course, the 2 buildings on Main Street, which is a retail or generally just commercial space. The existing zoning is B1, business district. When you get further to the west, that's the D1 district. That's where you see the start of the Pearl Street parking garage up to Lake Avenue. The proposed zoning is to simply do an overlay. So this redevelopment plan is an overlay to the B1 district. So the B1 district still applies, but this is an overlay zone. And in order for the overlay zone to be effective, the borough and the redeveloper has to enter in a redevelopment agreement. So there's some control to the process. No one can just take the zoning and build something. They have to engage with the borough. We have to like their plan. We have to vet their financing, and so on and so forth. This was a concept plan, so very early in the process. Still haven't really finished the project, but this is a sort of a project-specific redevelopment plan, meaning developer came to us, and we were basically effectuating the plan through new zoning. So the idea is that the ground floor have some retail restaurant space and another retail space fronting Pearl Street, which is not what was there before. Again, it was auto body and office space, and even in office space, you have to go up several steps. It wasn't even accessible. So we really wasn't much engagement to the street. And then there's some underground, sorry, not underground. You go through the building to a short, small parking area in the back, and the rest of the site that's really off the page, there's two existing buildings which were not being affected or changed by this redevelopment plan, other than being incorporated as permitted uses and allowed to have 3 stories, the same zoning standards as the B1. So the focus really is on the.
Just the question.
Sure, yeah, your microphone's
Ms.
off.
Clarkson, your microphone is off.
Oh. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
It's the sections labeled retail, for example. Are those proposed by the developer to be a retail use, or is that what the borough wanted to see there, or is it a combination of
I'll
both?
say it's a combination of both. We want to see the retail, but the retail, just be as a clarification, that's just a label. It could be restaurant, it could be a service business, it could be community space. It's just a general title. This drawing
Okay,
was given to us by the
This is not a
developer.
zoning, it's just a.
Yeah, just a generic label.
Okay.
Not restricted to retail.
Sorry, thank you.
That's fine. So some spaces, the remainder of spaces will be located across the street in the parking deck. In terms of the facade, I will give the developer credit. They hired a good architect, and we worked well with them, and it's a handsome building intended to be similar to the Woodmont construction across the street, which has a brick and some stucco. Again, this is still an early conceptual drawing, but we were pleased with how this was designed, especially making the building look like it's 2 different buildings with not a bridge feature, but a reasonably designed drive-through under building, which can often look quite ugly. But in this case, I think the architect did a great job listening to what we had to say. And these are meetings with Linda, Melissa, and Jonathan, the mayor and I had over the course of the past year and a half. So we're pleased with the architecture. But again, this is a fronting on Pearl Street, and it's intended to be compatible to the development across the street, which is the parking deck, the plaza, and the 5-story Woodmont building. So the idea was that perhaps 5 stories works around the Pearl Street corridor leading up to the plaza. And then you could drop down to 4 and 3 stories. So remember, 3 stories is important on Main Street, so the idea is to protect that. That's all we have in terms of conceptual drawings. It's still early in the process. We don't know when they were going to move forward with construction. So it takes time, but the idea is to put the zoning in place to effectuate such a project, and we're essentially required to do so because of the housing plan. So as you can tell, the purpose of this plan is to provide an overlay zone. Again, the B1 district still applies and requires a redevelopment agreement in order to take effect. The permitted uses are generally the same uses that you would see in a B1 district, so that's not really changing, except the key part, which our redevelopment attorney asked us to put in because Fair Share has been asking municipalities throughout the state to put this very specific language about not just apartments, but it's family apartments on upper floors with a minimum set aside 20%. I normally don't write that, but in acknowledgement of the experience that our redevelopment attorney had throughout the state, she requested that we put this language in. So not anything different. It's still apartments, but we're making it clear it's a 20% set aside.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Sure.
When you say apartments, does that mean that it's definitely going to be rental units?
In theory, yes, but since the borough really can't regulate ownership, and frankly, I think the percentage set aside now is the same, it can be ownership. Bob, I'm not sure there's anything further than that. It could be
But-
either, but I
Okay,
think
so if it's ownership also,
20%.
with affordable housing?
Yes, and it'll still require
Applicable?
20%.
Okay, thank
There
you.
used to be that as a 20% set aside for sale and 15% for rental, and we amended, this board amended that ordinance a few months ago. And in the ordinance that was just discussed 5-10 minutes ago, the same 20%, no matter whether it's ownership or
That's in the Fair
rental.
Housing Act, too.
Fair.
The amended Fair Housing Act that was passed in March 2024.
Yeah.
So they changed the set aside for rentals from 15% to 20% minimum.
Minimum.
Thank you.
Excuse me. In terms of bulk regulations, this was sort of crafted to the site specific, and we're using an average setback because it's tricky dealing with the angle of the property line and the building trying to be square. So it could mean, yes, there could be areas where the building's a little bit less than 10 feet from the curb, but the majority of the building would be more than 10 feet, probably 15 or 16 or 17 feet. So it could provide ample space from the sidewalk. The Main Street setback is really acknowledging the existing condition of 0%. Building coverage, 75%, which is pretty standard in business districts. Impervious coverage is 100%, which is not ideal, but it's really reflecting the existing condition. We will be working with the developer to try to introduce green roofs, blue roofs, and other green infrastructure as needed. And plus, I think they're going to be adding some setbacks where we're actually going to get under 100%, but the precise number, we don't know. So for flexibility, we're keeping it 100%. The building height is the same as a B1, 3 stories and 35 feet, except that up to 5 stories and 65 feet, which is generally the same type of massing as the Woodmont project, will be permitted only on Pearl Street and cannot be any closer than 60 feet from Main Street, which is quite a distance. Normally, we talk about step backs, that step back of the 4th floor from the 3rd story below. Usually, we use 10 feet, which is, I think, the 410 Main Street project utilized 10 feet. So imagine it being 60 feet. That's to ensure that this building does not look like it's towering over the historic Main Street buildings. In terms of design standards, we're consolidating the driveway along Pearl Street. There's multiple driveways, and it's shared. It's not even sized correctly, and it was competing with angled parking. It's a very dangerous situation. And we're also, I think, key here is we're removing the driveway along Main Street and converting it to pedestrian alley. That driveway is actually off-site, so this will be an off-site improvement. And then improved streetscape. Basically, whatever we would want to see on a typical street will be required on Pearl Street. And I kind of want to give us an example of the alleyway condition. We're trying to avoid this from happening anymore, right? Keep in mind, I got a 4-year-old on my shoulder while this is happening. Plus, there's a beautiful mural. Sorry?
A while ago, that's what we did with the driveway that now, I guess, the barber shop on the left and Metuchen News on the right.
Yeah, I believe it's turned
And
into a pedestrian
that's
alley.
what's going to happen here, no cars?
Yeah, the idea of this is no more cars. In fact, it's not just no more cars, but they would require to put an upright curb, and then the resulting space with a beautiful mural, this becomes either a walkable alley or a combination with the outdoor seating with a neighboring business. Not to the benefit of the developer, but for the adjacent property owner. So there's been some coordination happening there. So this is a great opportunity to clean up the circulation in downtown. In terms of the design standards regarding parking, we're doing a pretty standard 1 space per 1,000 square feet non-residential. I don't think we're going to get into business whether it's retail, service, office needs a different requirement. It's just simply easier to just treat it as a single use and try to be proactive and encourage development and economic activity. In terms of RSIS, this is a perfect site to do 1-to-1, 1 space per unit. You can't get any closer to the train station at this point. And it's actually the same standards we've been using in the Metuchen Arts District, and this site's closer. And the design standards that I had written and the board approved for the Metuchen Arts District, really expansion and trying to encourage better design. All those standards that we've spent years working on and tweaking and wordsmithing have been incorporated into this plan, which is why the document is 60-plus pages long. Half of it's design standards. So going back to the statutory requirements of the redevelopment plan, so in terms of local objectives, being clear, this is overlay zoning, requires a redevelopment agreement. It's consistent with the borough's master plan. It seeks to preserve its residential character because the site is within a downtown, already redeveloped area. We're not touching the residential neighborhoods. And to preserve the historic Main Street buildings. The land uses are appropriate to the area because they're incorporating the same uses that are surrounding it. Opportunities for housing and a workforce within walking distance of the train station, and focusing development downtown, as the borough has done for the last 2 decades, focusing downtown and in adjacent areas, but not really touching the residential neighborhoods. And of course, promoting downtown investment and really trying to implement the idea of preparing a vision plan by virtue of a redevelopment plan for this specific site. There's no conflict with Township of Edison, frankly, because it's in the middle of town and within an already established downtown area, so there's no conflict there. The report has some more information, but that's generally the gist. Same with the Middlesex County Comprehensive Plan. No conflict there because it's already proposed development within an already developed area. In terms of the state plan, you probably recall the state plan was recently updated December 17th of last year. Most of the plan is the same goals, policies, and objectives from the prior plan. So I just want to focus that this site, as most is the borough, is in Metropolitan Planning Area 1, which promotes revitalization of cities and towns, really growth in compact form. The term that we use often is recentering centers, promoting redevelopment of centers and promoting economic diversity, and encourage development to support transit. This is a perfect example of supporting transit. It's putting housing within walking distance. In terms of the other statutory requirements, in terms of the provision for relocation of housing units, there's no housing units on the Pearl Street side. There's 2 units in the Main Street building. We're not touching that building. We need to identify the property being acquired. This is a rehabilitation area, so the redevelopment plan, actually, the local redevelopment housing law does not authorize eminent domain in a rehab area. If the borough wanted to acquire property, they would have to do it through an arm's length agreement, but we don't anticipate the borough needing to purchase property to assemble. It's already assembled as one property, by one property owner. In inventory all affordable housing units, there are none. In terms of replacing them, since there are none, we don't need to plan for them. And finally, in terms of the zero emission charging infrastructure, given the, I think, up to 15 parking spaces on site, we don't anticipate a lot of these spaces being available to the public. But if they do choose to share with the public, would be encouraging the property owner to install EV charging infrastructure. So that's it for the Pearl Street plan. Any questions?
Wow, I'm going to ask the board members if they have questions. We heard 1 or 2 along the way. Any more for Chris and the work that he's been done with the team there?
I did have one question. On the slide that had the setback from Main Street at 0%, can you said it's because of an existing condition, but are we talking about the buildings that were demolished? I'm just trying to clarify, were these demolished? And
The Main Street building?
yeah, that one, the Main Street setback. It says 0.
Yeah, the 0-foot setback's intended to just reflect the existing condition, but we don't anticipate that building being demolished, no.
Okay.
I would hope
That's my
not. They're
misunderstanding.
historic buildings, yeah.
Other questions?
Chris, obviously, I'm so happy about the alley being closed to traffic. And just as you were doing a presentation, I just had thought of it. Being that they're going to be closing that to cars, we'll be building the curb, which is great. Do you think we have enough space for like another parking space or 15-minute parking space maybe, or?
That is a good question. Generally, driveways are one way, it's 12 feet wide, so it's going to depend on how much space is on either side of it.
That one feels so narrow, like.
Actually, there probably might be space for, as long as it's at least 23 feet,
Yeah.
we could potentially fit a parking space. And frankly, that could be another ADA space as well.
Could be another ADA space. Yep, that'd be a good use for sure, right near the crosswalk. Just something to think about. And if it's not big enough for a parking space, perhaps the curb can go even further out into the street and kind of meet up with the other
Yeah,
curb.
to that point, I know we have the Main Street project that Michael Baker International is working
Yeah.
on, so there might need to be some coordination. And maybe in a perfect world, it's closed now,
Yeah.
because we don't know when this project will move forward. So we will likely need to coordinate with those engineers at Michael Baker. That would be a great change order.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Bob, you want to act on these individually, or we're going to wait till
Why
Chris's
don't we
summation?
get them all done, and we'll do the resolutions at the end?
Very good, thank you.
So we'll do
Okay,
the
Chris?
public comment afterwards.
Yeah, we'll see if there's any public comment or questions.
So 303 Amboy Avenue is, as Bob indicated, really an expansion, small expansion of the Metuchen Arts District, which we last touched or adopted in, I think it was May 2025. So we're here a year later with the concept of, so let me go back. So this was pretty much the redevelopment area of the Arts District, so it included the Forum Theater, gas station, and a strip of University of Radiology as parcel A that's intended to be revitalized as a reconstructed theater and a restaurant space next to it. Across the street, we have properties that are owned in single ownership, other than the Halsted Street lots owned by the Parking Authority. The other properties on both sides of Warnick Place is owned by Arnold Brothers, Victorian Office Rentals, basically the Nancy Jessen properties. That's been incorporated into that plan, which has been in the plan for a few years now. And in 2025, we included University of Radiology to facilitate a subdivision because we need to make that a permitted use. And I think the purpose of that plan was partly to adjust the zoning standards. In addition to adding University of Radiology, we adjusted the zoning standards for the Halsted Street lot. That we had a concept that would basically serve as a project that would provide some funding, or basically a funding source for possibly the construction, but certainly part of the programming of the theater. So we're here basically a year later, because at the time we were talking to a contract purchaser, not the property owner, the contract purchaser, thinking about, hey, we would like to be part of this arts district. And so Linda and I met with the property owner, the contract purchaser, to discuss their concept. We did not get to a point where we could, figure out what exactly that was by the time the housing plan was updated the following month in June. So we continued to discuss, and so for those eagle eyes, I know some council members are asking, how come there's an additional lot? So to be clear, the housing plan includes block 148, lots 6 and 8. This is just a parking lot. This project was meant to address the fourth round's unmet need. In comparison to 1216 Pearl Street, it was part of the realistic development potential of the 42 units. So this lot was meant to address the remaining 78 units, part of the fourth round, as an unmet need. So not as critical, but as part of the fair share plan, we have to adopt this ordinance just to make sure that it is feasible to add affordable housing. So when we talked to the contract purchaser, they came to us months later and said, well, what if we include the corner lot? I said, well, in concept, that would be great because we would like to get the driveways off of Amboy Avenue. So long story short, this redevelopment plan considers all 3 lots. So it goes a little bit beyond the housing plan because it was part of the discussions after the housing plan was adopted. That doesn't mean any future redevelopment has to include lot 4. It could just be lots 6 and 8, but it could also include lot 4. So there's some flexibility in the plan.
Sorry, Chris.
Sure.
It's a little small for me. So what's on Lot 4? What's that building?
It's a residential looking structure, but it's an office use, I believe.
And it fronts on Amboy?
It's fronts on Amboy, but also has frontage on Graham. It's a corner lot. It's across the street from Graham, from the funeral home, which has a large front yard and lots of trees. You can't see it in the photo.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? I didn't hear what you said.
Lot 4 contains a building with really little parking, if any, that fronts on Amboy, but also has frontage on Amboy, Graham Avenue. It's a corner lot.
On Amboy and Graham?
And Graham.
Near
If you
where
go
the
further
bridge-
down the site, that's where Khan's Crossing is.
Yeah,
Where did Graham doesn't?
by the bridge, the crossing.
Oh,
Oh, so
okay.
I'll make this clear. So Graham, you probably think of it's part of a residential street in a historic neighborhood, but there is a stub portion of the Graham Avenue
Okay, I
right
didn't
away
know
that's
that.
within the business district. It's
I
just a
didn't know
stub
that.
street that ends, and then just south of that is the
Okay.
Khan's Crossing.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. So in terms of planning activities, this is more involved because it's part of the Arts District, but this started, again, back in 2016 with a vision plan, consider redevelopment to reactivate the downtown. 2018, we applied for a grant with the Middlesex County Cultural Arts Commission, and the borough was awarded about $3.5 million grant. Part of that was to purchase the theater and for planning. So again, we're almost a decade into that process. Around that time, 2018, 2020, we designated the Forum Theater block, which includes a strip of land associated with the University of Radiology, as well as at the time and still, vacant gas station as a condemnation area in need of redevelopment. We did prepare an original a plan for that area, but it was never adopted. At the time, we started thinking about we need to think more broadly, plus COVID hit, so it was a little tricky to think about that. Around the same time, just like with 12 and 16 Pearl Street, the borough went through the process of designating the entire town as an area in need of rehabilitation, and then a plan was adopted for the whole town, which just incorporated underlying zoning. In 2023, it was expanded to include the Arnold Brothers Victorian office rental, Nancy Jessen properties, as well as the Parking Authority lot. And then when we were in discussions with how to fund the theater, it was determined it would be worth the while to study, and it was eventually determined that the Halsted Street lot is a non-condemnation redevelopment plan area, not a plan. And then 2025, just last year, we amended the plan to reflect that designation and tweak the zoning standards for the Halsted Street lot, which this board approved. A month later, housing plan is adopted, and then we're required to adopt plans to effectuate the concept of sites in the housing plan. Same process, council is through myself preparing a plan, you're reviewing it and sending it back to council with comments, and your role is to determine whether it effectuates the master plan, similar to land development ordinance. Same statutory requirements. Skip ahead. So this is, as you can tell, the printout is just a text amendment. Frankly, we didn't not have the time or the funds to really do an exhaustive 100-page colorful document. So this is simply a text amendment to include block 148, lots 4, 6, and 8, which we're referring to as parcel F, since there's A, B, C, D, E. Next one up, F. So this is a site-specific redevelopment plan. Again, a mixed-use building that primarily fronts on Amboy, but could include lot 4, so it'll be a corner lot development. As far as the remainder of the whole plan that we're familiar with, the 2025 plan remains the same. No changes there. What we did do is we had to update some background information to include those 3 extra lots, as well as, given that the state plan was updated, we updated the state plan analysis, same analysis I went through on the prior plan. And of course, meet the borough's affordable housing obligations. The purpose of this plan is a superseding zone, so it's replacing the B3 zone that's underneath it. But there's an overlay option to, if the redeveloper or any person wants to come in on this plan, they can do the 3 stories as is permitted in a B3 zoning anyway. But if they want to do a 4th story, they have to enter into redevelopment agreement. So we have to like their plan, we have to check their financing, approve of the architecture. So it's, again, more control if they want to do the 4th story. Because when we were talking to the contract purchaser, they were, I don't want to say pushing, but they were really like the idea of a 4th story, but we weren't quite there yet. But we have to adopt the plan to have a realistic opportunity for housing, and the changes in this plan, certainly a realistic option for affordable housing. Again, the overlay for the 4th story requires redevelopment agreement, so we have control. The permitted uses are, again, the same as the rest of the arts districts. We've incorporated all those uses, the arts and crafts, housing, and office space, and unique housing above. All those uses were brought in, retail, personal service, and whatnot. And again, 20% set aside for family rentals or owners, but only within a new building. In terms of bulk regulations, the Amboy Avenue setback, we wanted to match the setback of what's now the Community Options building, which is about 6 or 7 feet. We didn't get a survey of that property, but we want to match that building if it's a 1-story building, because that building is also a 1-story building. If it's a multi-story building, we're going to push it back to 10 feet so we can get some green area and some trees along Amboy Avenue. The Graham Avenue setback is 5 feet, just to give more flexibility. There's not much development on the other side, and there's very, very little traffic on Graham, so we think a 5-foot setback is reasonable. Pretty standard building and impervious coverage that you see in downtown developments, 75%, 90%. The height's 3 stories and 40 feet, which is a little bit increase from the 35 underlying zoning, but that's to give more flexibility, because we found over the years 35 feet is a little restrictive for a mixed-use building, so you want a taller height on the ground floor. Whereas for like if it's a multifamily building, you can get away with 11, 10, 10. But for a mixed-use building, if you have commercial on the ground floor, you really do want that first floor to be 14, 16 feet. So that extra 5 feet's something that we were suggesting here, and we've done in other places too. The overlay for the fourth floor just simply adds another level and a 10-foot module for housing. But again, it's only allowed subject to redevelopment agreement, and we want it stepped back from Amboy Avenue. In terms of design standards, no changes at all, other than that we added that any vehicular entry that goes through a building cannot occur on Main Street or Amboy Avenue. This was done because we were concerned with how the garage entry looked from Amboy Avenue. Frankly, we do not want another driveway, or we want to eliminate driveways on Amboy Avenue. That may not be possible if Graham is not involved, the Graham Avenue corner lot's involved, but if there is access from Amboy Avenue, we want to make sure that it's designed right. And this applies to all development throughout the Arts District, but it won't impact development within the Halsey Street and the Arnold Brothers, Victorian Alvis Rent, and Nancy Jessen property, because their frontages will be on Calvin and Wernick. Otherwise, no other changes to design standards. In terms of the relations with local objectives, again, in this case, it's a superseding underlying zones. We're replacing the B3, but there's an overlay option for height. It is, again, consistent with the master plan. These are the same statements we had in 2025 amendment. So preservation of the residential character, land uses are appropriate, opportunities for more housing and workforce, and focusing in and around the downtown area. And again, another example of trying to prepare a vision plan for the overall arts district. And I'm sure over the years, we may expand the arts district to other lots on the edges of Main and Amboy when the time is appropriate. Again, since we're Middletown, no conflicts with Edison Township, Middlesex County, and promotes the state plan smart growth. We're in an MPA, PA1, revitalize cities and towns, growth in compact forms, the same standards from the 12 and 16 Pearl Street. And we're trying to encourage redevelopment at locations that support transit. And this is not as close to 1216 Pearl, but is within easy walking distance to the train station. It's only about 2 blocks away once you get to the corner of Main and Amboy. There's no existing units on site, so it's commercial space, so this project will not relocate units. There's no existing affordable units. There's no need to replace affordable units. Eminent domains not permitted because, again, this is a rehabilitation area. For this specific site, the remainder of the site is mixed between non-condemnation area needed redevelopment, which is the Halsey Street lot, and then the condemnation area needed redevelopment, which is the Forum Theater gas station. It's irrelevant for the Forum Theater because the borough owns that lot, and the gas station. Do you happen to know the status of the condemnation on the gas station?
What do you mean? Like, we have site control?
Okay. So, obviously useful, because now we have ownership of that. We do anticipate public parking spaces throughout the Arts District, not just the project area. So there will be opportunities for public EV spaces once we get a full redevelopment plan or a site plan application before the board. And that's it. Again, just a simple text amendment, not a pretty document, but we just need to get this parcel F added to the plan to make sure we comply with our affordable housing obligations.
Very good. Questions, board members, for Chris about his presentation?
I have one, Chairman. Just a quick one.
Certainly.
And this might be actually for you, Mr. Renaud, and perhaps Mr. Cosenza. And this came up when myself and our very meticulous council member, Vinita Jethwani, were discussing this. So we have an agreement with the Fair Share Housing Plan. That plan says 148, lots 6 and 8 are supposed to be included. Assuming the borough goes ahead at our next meeting and approves this amendment, we're actually going to be putting 4, 6, and 8 in. Do we need to go back to Fair Share and say, hey, by the way, we added 4 too, or are we good?
No.
Well, that answers that. Other questions for Chris? Please.
Okay, so I saw EV infrastructure go by a couple of times. Could you tell us a little bit more about if you have some details about what that might look like?
On the EV?
Yeah, the electric vehicle charging infrastructure.
So generally speaking, for any preliminary site plan approval, we're required to provide EV spaces on, as part of the project, and it's for private use. The municipal land, in this case, the local redevelopment housing law requires that we, I guess you could say, investigate and promote and encourage public EV. So in this case, it's not just looking at private lots, it's considering the public network. So that could be a combination of, is there parking that could be available to the public, in which case it should be EV, or does the project include public parking facilities? And if it does include public parking facilities, it should be encouraged to put EV spaces. Otherwise, I have to check the statute, but I don't think for preliminary site plan on publicly owned property, it may not apply, but this will encourage public EV spaces to be shared with the public.
Okay, to answer your question, okay. All right,
Want to do a public portion now instead of later?
you want to do statements and questions separately, council?
No.
Okay, so we're going to open up the public for questions and statements simultaneously. Anyone's in the public who'd like to ask a question, come down to the microphone, give us your name, your address, make your statement or ask your question. And I see no one out in the, I see someone, but I don't see any questions. And as a result, unless anyone has any thinks otherwise, I'm going to close the public portion. Are you going to, I'm sorry, did you want to?
Oh, I'm done. Can I
Okay.
unplug?
I'm going to close the public portion. And Bob, I would imagine you want the board to adopt these independently, one at a time?
Yes, we're going to do 3 resolutions, if you don't mind. The first one pertains to the Affordable Housing Ordinance. The operative portions will read, whereas proposed ordinance 2026-04 implements and incorporates the adopted and endorsed housing element and fair share plan and addresses the requirements of NJAC 5:93-1 et sec, as amended and supplemented NJAC 5:80-26.1 et sec, as amended and supplemented in the New Jersey Fair Housing Act of 1985, as amended and supplemented. Now therefore be it resolved by the Planning Board of the Borough of Metuchen that the Planning Board finds that proposed ordinance number 2026-04 is not inconsistent with the master plan of the Borough of Metuchen, and be it further resolved that the Planning Board endorses ordinance number 2026-04 and recommends its adoption.
Here, here.
So, just in case you were wondering what they are, the things that I mentioned, it's the NJAC parts are the UHAC rules, the Uniform Housing Board Control rules, as well. Sorry.
That's fine. No worries.
All right,
Very good.
so if we could have a motion on
There you
that?
go. We have a motion to adopt 2026-04, please.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, great. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Joanne?
Ms. Clarkson?
Yes.
Ms. Cohn?
Yes.
Mr. Delia?
Yes.
Ms. Gilbert?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Ms. Koskowski?
Yes.
Ms. Zachariah?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes. Okay, 2026-04 is adopted. Moving down to 2026-05. Anyone there?
Yep, that one is the resolution pertaining to 12 and 16 Pearl Street. Resolution recommending adoption of the 12 and 16 Pearl Street redevelopment plan for certain properties within the Borough of Metuchen, Middlesex County, State of New Jersey. The operative portion reads, whereas pursuant to NJSA 40A 12A-7E, the Borough Council introduced ordinance number 2026-05 and referred the 12 and 16 Pearl Street redevelopment plan's consistency with the borough's master plan to the Planning Board, and whereas the Planning Board has conducted the required review, now therefore be it resolved by the Planning Board of the Borough of Metuchen that pursuant to NJSA 40A 12A-7, the Planning Board has reviewed the redevelopment plan entitled 12 and 16 Pearl Street Redevelopment Plan prepared by LRK Inc. in accordance with NJSA 40A 12A-7, and be it further resolved that the Planning Board finds that the proposed redevelopment plan is not inconsistent with the master plan of the Borough of Metuchen as amended, and recommends that the Borough Council adopt ordinance number 2026-05.
Don't forget to breathe when you do that. Okay, so can we have a motion to adopt ordinance 2026-05, please?
I'll move.
Thank you very much. And we have a second. Joanne?
I'm sorry, who was the second? Thank you, Mr. Grossman. Ms. Clarkson?
Yes.
Ms. Cohn?
Yes.
Mr. Delia?
Yes.
Ms. Gelber?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Ms. Koskowski?
Yes.
Ms. Zachariah?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes. Okay. Ordinance is adopted. Thank you. And last but not least, moving on to 2026-06.
Last one, resolution recommending adoption of a proposed amended redevelopment plan for the expanded Arts District within the Borough of Metuchen, Middlesex County, State of New Jersey. Whereas the properties are adjacent to the expanded Metuchen Arts District Rehabilitation Area, and the Borough Council has determined that it is in the best interest of Borough of Metuchen to amend the amended Metuchen Arts District redevelopment plan as set forth in ordinance number 2026-6 to include the properties to set forth zoning to allow a realistic opportunity for the provision of affordable housing on the properties. Proposed amendment, and whereas pursuant to NJSA 40A, 12A, 7E, the Borough Council introduced ordinance number 2026-06 and referred the proposed amendment to the Planning Board for review and a determination of the proposed amendment's consistency with the master plan. Now therefore be it resolved by the Planning Board of the Borough of Metuchen that pursuant to NJSA 40A 12A -7, the Planning Board has reviewed the proposed amendment to the amended Metuchen Arts District redevelopment plan prepared by LRK Inc. in accordance with NJSA 40A 12A-7, and be it further resolved that the Planning Board finds that the proposed amendment to the amended Metuchen Arts District redevelopment plan is not inconsistent with the master plan of the Borough of Metuchen as amended, and recommends that the Borough Council adopt ordinance number 2026-06.
You're here. So we have a motion to adopt ordinance 2026-06, please.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Linda. Can we have a second?
Second.
Alan, thank you. Very good. Joanne?
Ms. Clarkson?
Yes.
Ms. Cohn?
Yes.
Mr. Delia?
Yes.
Ms. Gelber?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Ms. Koskowski?
Yes.
Ms. Zachariah?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Thank
Okay, 2606 is adopted. Thank you all. Okay. Moving on to this evening's correspondence, which looks like the assisted memory living facility that we approved some years ago is going to not be developed. Bob?
Yes, we received correspondence to that effect.
So while we all may be disappointed, the world's changed since COVID and things are what they are.
It's not necessary that we take any action. Once we grant an approval, it's up to the applicant. They can either construct or not construct, so we don't have to do anything.
Okay, so,
And,
Go ahead, Ellen.
but ownership of the property hasn't changed?
No, ownership hasn't changed. No, this was a leased property anyway. It's still same owner.
So nothing is proposed at this time?
Nothing is proposed at this time.
Thank you.
so for the first two portion of our correspondence, that is Artist Living Center and Metuchen 1, we don't need to make any formal action. However, I see the final thing we have, minutes for February 19th of 2026. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes, please?
Motion?
Second.
Okay. I'll just do all in favor. If you were present and would like to vote, please say aye.
Aye.
If you don't want to vote, say nay. I'm going to say the ayes have it as far as the meeting minutes are concerned. And then I see we have some closed session for internal procedure discussion. And Bob, we need to sink into dark recesses of another room, or?
No, I'm not sure we can do this in closed session, to tell you the truth. As my understanding is this is the discussion, you put this on the agenda pertaining to essentially preparation of applications before they're submitted.
Just general housing, it's basic. We're not discussing anything in particular, just the basic
Okay,
procedures.
all right. Well, I don't think that's going to qualify for a closed session discussion then, so I'll just sort of report to the board that we did have a discussion among the professionals. We are going to try to tighten up what comes before the board in terms of review. We're going to try to get everything that comes to the planning board to go to the DRC first and make sure that applications that come to you are ready for prime time.
Well, wouldn't that be lovely? Councilman Dill, you wouldn't have something to do with this by any chance, would you? Yes,
know what
well,
you're talking about.
this is close, near and dear to all of our hearts. And I couldn't be more excited at the concept of having a applicant be prepared and have checked all the boxes on the most rudimentary, fundamental, basic things that we would all take for granted, but yet don't seem to come to us when we get an application.
And have their story straight when they come in front of us with their client.
Boy, things have changed over the years, I'll tell you. We've got off
Yeah,
this.
well, as
Do we
part
want
of,
to add to that, those statements, just for clarification, so that the board understands?
I did have a couple things to talk about.
Please, go right ahead, Monty.
I guess like a couple main things, and it's up for discussion. It was basically just to strengthen our consistency and efficiency as a board, and hoping to make sense on what the board wants in front of them, and how we feel, as well as internal process and how that goes. The focus on specifically the application being presented, and what the applicant is requesting from the board. Sorry.
Okay.
Our decision-making and any conditions we consider should relate directly to the relief of or approval being sought. It's important that our actions remain consistent with our existing ordinance and follow our established legal and internal processes. So I'm not expecting everyone to know exactly what is required to go in front of the construction department or the zoning department, but when things come in front of the board and they're asking for those specific reliefs, it should be focused on those things specifically. I understand questions are going to come up, but if B, it has nothing to do with A, I would just hope that we focus on A. Also, specifically about the applications being complete, and things like that and coming in front of the board, I know that you guys want to see a complete application in front of you. With our internal process, we do have a request of waiver submission. So I just hope that you guys understand that we love your support as an administrative office, that we are doing our role, trying to get a complete application for you guys to look at. But if the applicant is stating that they are waiving the submission because of whatever the case is, can we please just focus on why they're not submitting that? And we're not trying to bring an incomplete application to you to review at this time.
I'm sorry, Moni, could you give me an example of what that might mean, a waiver of submission?
So we do have a waiver of submission request form that you can, if we have A, B, and C as a completeness checklist
Okay.
that we need, an applicant can waive that submission as an ask for a waiving of that submission, and that's technically to the board. It's not to us, so we can't say, hey, no, you can't waive this.
Oh, I see, so when they're asking for a waiver, it's not you granting it?
It's
a
you
request
guys are
for us.
granting that waiver. So I can't say, hey, no, the board's going to definitely want to see this, but it's up to the applicant on why they're not submitting that,
Is that a conversation we could have in DRC?
Yes.
Because then I could be like, yeah, they're not going to waive it, you got to.
Which I know, everything coming to the planning board needs DRC. That is a known thing, so that could be handled before that time.
Okay.
And it's still up to the applicant
they
after
want to,
DRC to
right.
either bring that to the table to the board beforehand or discuss why they still need
So
it
even if the
waived.
DRC strongly suggests that they don't request a waiver, they can still do that?
Correct.
Okay.
I did want to add to that. And some boards do this. I know Highland Park does this. if there's anything on a checklist that's checked off as sought to be waived, what we do typically there, and some boards do this, is they actually vote on whether to accept the waiver and to deem the application complete or incomplete, which means there are situations where an applicant could say, I've requested these 3 things on a major site plan checklist, a minor site plan checklist, or a minor subdivision checklist, a major subdivision checklist. And they're asking you, the board, for a waiver. The board, in theory, could deny it and deem the application incomplete. So it may be part of our role at DRC to say, just so you know, you're taking a risk because you may waste a month, because the board may say, no, we want that information. Bob,
And
would that?
is that something the board can do before they hear the application? Do you know what I mean? Like, if we get the application and we see that they've requested a waiver, do we have to sit through the whole presentation before?
I've seen.
Yeah, I think that's what we should do, is if they're requesting a waiver, and as that should be the first item that we address on the application. That
Right.
way, we're not going to listen to an entire application and then decide that we don't have everything we need. So,
It's,
Yeah, and I don't think that's been the case. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think we've ever heard an application where the first thing is
Right.
the request for waivers.
listen,
Correct,
it's
which
it's
is, I
not
think,
sad
what
that we
Bob
find
suggested
ourselves
we
where
do
we
that
find
now.
ourselves, but I think it's very, if we want to get volunteers to continue to participate in planning board, this process has got to improve. And, I'm setting my aspirations very low, like, ability to use 2 microphones, look at have your presentation working on your laptop, so I think, the board's kind of reached the level of its patience, so it would be great, to your point and to Bob's point and Monet's, before we even get rolling, if they don't meet the checklist, the board can say, stop right there, we're not going to hear it, and we're not wasting anyone's time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are some boards who have a hearing just for completeness, and the following month is the application. I would not suggest we do that here. We would vote on completeness and immediately go into the application, which is, I think, what Bob is implying. Yeah.
Indeed.
There's-
On the checklist, if they mark they want a waiver, do they have to give a reason?
Typically, what we ask is to provide it in your narrative on why that waiver is being asked for. So there is a description, and I would say the last 2, I'm not going to just say what application it was, but it was the simple fact that they were going to comply with the ordinance. So they didn't feel the need to provide certain plans if they were going to have to go through the internal process that anyone else will go through to make sure that they comply.
It sounds like we're talking about, I don't want to put the applicant on the spot, but it's not just that last one, but I think the example you're using is there's a subdivision application. They say they're going to comply, meaning they don't want to show the landscape plans. It's been my position, they need to show that, especially in a case when any variance is requested. If it's a completely conforming subdivision, the board is limited on whether they can approve or deny the application, which is similar to what happened on Raleigh Court. Completely conforming subdivision, they didn't not have to show house plans or landscape. They were going to comply with the underlying ordinance. But in my view, when a variance is requested, even if it's just one, I think the board should see everything.
And traditionally, that was the practice, right? Everybody would come, and there was an understanding that, there would have to be some measure of information provided. But we've gotten away from that over time to the point where, like I said, people are incredulous when you ask for, what's the treatment going to be? There's no information. It's just a vacuum. So we could do so much better, and we need to. And it starts with, hey, you guys on the front line saying,
It could
do
just be
not
as simple as,
receive passcode, do not collect $200, be ready.
I mean, we could say at DRC, like, you're not going to move forward with that. You can ask for the waiver, you're just wasting 30 days
Right.
and all the money on a notice.
So, Bob, for legal purposes, do we need to do anything other with this conversation other than say that the board desires this
Actually,
completeness?
I had one more question.
Sure, please.
Bob, I remember when I was a zoning official, I'd struggle with this too. Does a mistake on the application for development or a conflict between 2 sets of plans, would you consider that justification to deem it incomplete.
I think that's discretionary with the person who's reviewing. Is it substantial? Does it make a difference? You know?
Yeah, I mean, again, sometimes we, like I said, we're being asked to prove something that we don't have the correct plans on, and that's a whole different story, and I think it's a hard stop. If you're saying, hey, the setback is supposed to be 5 and it's 4, and that's the only change.
We've also had applications where, you know, the architect says the building is, you know, 3,252 square feet, and the engineer says it's 3,250 square feet. I mean, you know, as I said, I think you have to use some discretion. If, you know, if it's, one of them says it's a one-story building and the other one says it's a two-story building, obviously, you know, we have a problem.
That's major.
I think by the same token, it's the same standard we should use on the waiver checklist. Is it something that will substantially have an impact on the decision that we make?
Right.
You know, some of the submissions may not be of, you know, obviously, if there's no site plan submitted, you know, we're not going to hear it. But, you know, I think asking them, or maybe telling them they better provide a reason so that the board can make a decision easily.
Yeah, the checklist has at the very top, if you're requesting a waiver, you must provide the reasons. So if anything, I would suggest not bury it in a narrative. It should be a separate letter, typically
Yeah.
prepared by the attorney. My client's requesting a waiver from XYZ, and they need to give
Right, and
like
what's the
full
reason for
paragraph
each one?
reasons for why.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that sounds
You
good.
know, to have it maybe as a, you know, separate so that we can consider it.
Okay.
And we've had actually, this happens probably more with the Board of Adjustment than it does with the Planning Board, but, you know, where we have a survey requirement, I don't so much have a problem if we don't get a survey with a raised seal, but we have gotten surveys that they don't have the title block on, it's crossed, you know, it's off, it looks like, you know, we don't know whether this survey is from, you know, the 21st century or not, you know, so, you know, that, I think we need to, you know, make sure that a survey is a survey, not part of a survey.
Well, I think once we had a survey where the person put in the box, you know, put in whatever they were proposing, you know, they drew it in
Right.
themselves.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
we can't have that,
you know,
right.
No, things have gotten pretty bad. They don't even know what it is they're applying for, and the disagreement between the three professionals that come in. And
So I have a procedural question. So if we're going to look at whether an application is complete before, is that something that we vote on to say that unanimously we disagree, we're not going to hear this? Or how will that happen when we're in session?
What has to be submitted has to be adopted by ordinance. So it's not, in other words, if we don't like what we're getting, we might have to look at the ordinance and see, does the ordinance list everything that we want to see on these applications? But no, the board can't take an application if they met all of the requirements that are in the ordinance and say, we don't find this to be complete. I mean, we've had situations where we've asked for additional information and the people have gone along with it and they come back at the next meeting and bring something additionally. But as a general rule, if they meet the requirements of the ordinance and provide everything that's in the ordinance, then and the application's complete, then we've got to hear it. Now, if for example, such a thing as the survey example that I just suggested came to the board, I think the board can say, well, you know, we don't find this to be a survey, so we don't find it to be complete. But if it meets the requirements of the ordinance, it's complete and the board has to hear it.
And one other thing we talked about for years, Bob, is that we have a checklist, for basically planning board applications, but not so for a single or two-family dwelling that goes to the zoning board. So we've been contemplating whether there should be a checklist, a simple one, for homeowners. That doesn't affect this body, though.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I ask one other thing? that I have found. When we have an application, for example, for a subdivision, plus they want to put the house on it, 2 houses or whatever. And when we ask to see something about, a plan for the house, we get a computer-generated thing that looks like a cartoon. Do you know what I mean? There's no depth to it. It's just a flat image that's been generated from a computer. And, while maybe there's everything complete with regard to the subdivision application, the other component, which is what you're putting on that lot, the proofs submitted for that part of the application are really, I think, lacking, and I wouldn't want to, decide on that. And so what do? We halfway through the hearing and we do the subdivision and?
Well,
I don't know.
subdivisions are.
I face that as a quandary.
Right, so there's basically two kinds of subdivisions, or actually there's more than 2 kinds of subdivisions, but if there are no variances sought, essentially they can come up with a subdivision plan and come. It's as of right. If the board were to turn down the subdivision, it would lose in court. So if somebody comes in with a conforming lot, or lots showing a subdivision that conforms, they don't, and it's a minor subdivision, they don't have to provide houses, plans if they don't want to. I mean, the board can ask for it and maybe they'll provide it, but frankly, they're just not required to. But anytime they're seeking a variance, my position has always been that you're entitled to look at whatever plans you think are necessary in order for you to decide whether or not the variance should be granted. And if they don't want to provide the plans that allow you to do that, then you're going to turn down the subdivision.
Yeah, a good example of that is when especially when there's a minor subdivision involving lot area, lot width variances. I always been asking, and obviously consistent with the master plan, an analysis of the housing and lot characteristics. How does it meet? How does the proposed lots fit with the other lots, and how do the homes being proposed fit with other homes in the street?
Yeah, how does it fit in the neighborhood? How does it relate to the variances that are being requested? All those things. So I think you're, certainly fully within your rights to ask for whatever plans you think are necessary, as I said, for you to analyze whether the variances can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, and without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. That's what you're required to do. And if you can't do that and they don't want to give you the plans, then you turn down the variance. I can't make that conclusion
Yeah,
based
you've
on what
made
I've
that-
seen.
You've made that statement many times
Yeah.
over the years. Like, you don't have to approve this. To that point, those extra plans that we may think are useful isn't on a checklist. So it would be probably our job at DRC to say, hey, you need variances, so we need to go beyond. But to help them to get to a point where they can present something useful.
You're keying in on.
Those things are on the checklist.
Not like a lot analysis or housing analysis. Like,
Oh, yeah, no, but.
No, and that's where I think when we at TRC, Ellen would be the one to say, hey, don't just provide an analysis, have some context and understand, how far across the street, how many properties down. There's been an absence of that. It's either non-existent or it's very cursory, very basic, right? So however we kind of get from what we used to do to how we do it now, whether you have to formalize it, whatever, I think that's the bottom line, is that's where we're all, wanting to see that richness in what's coming to the board, so it feels it has the information it needs to make a decision.
yeah. So we already have bits and pieces of that analysis in the current master plan. The whole lot and housing analysis is from the 1999 housing plan element. So as part of this master plan update, I want to really beef up that analysis, because now how housing fits into neighborhoods is even more critical than ever, with rising unaffordability, and just the high cost of land means developers most likely going to build the biggest house possible under zoning, because it's just simply a cost factor from the developer's perspective, which is making the houses not fit in even more so today, plus all the comments on historic homes being, or older homes being demolished. It's becoming a heightened issue in this town. So I do plan to beef up that language in the master plan, obviously subject to the planning board's review and approval once we get to that point in June, July. But my suggestion would be that perhaps we need to also amend the checklist of, in the case of a variances are required, these additional items.
I think that would be good. As witness to history, you've seen it evolve over the years, and we understand the importance of it. And that's why we raised the bar for subdivisions, and that's why the language was changed in the last master plan reexamination.
Yeah.
And perhaps it needs to go farther in order to discourage
I agree.
bad behavior. Okay, so do we need to call that anything, Bob, or this is
Nope.
just conversation? Okay. Thank you, Monet. Thank you, Chris.
Do you have anything else?
No.
No, okay.
Okay. Anything else to discuss this evening before we open up public portion? Okay, I'm going to, again, reopen the public portion for comments and questions. Looking out into the public and seeing no one there other than one individual who isn't coming forward, I'm going to say we're going to close the public portion. If there's nothing else, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Just one question.
Yes.
Can the current application that was adjourned from this evening, how many adjournments are they allowed?
We usually allow 2 before we tell them to renotice, so this is the second one if the application can't. I think this was our request, was it not, Chris, that they not come to this meeting, or no?
I didn't get
We
the,
told them that they should go to a DRC before they come back. And I
Okay.
guess that they couldn't schedule it.
oh, you know
No,
what?
we scheduled it.
We did go to DRC, and I said, what do the houses look like? I mean, we're still not at that point.
Oh, right.
Although, sort of odd, but now we're talking about an active application, but I'm not comfortable with what they haven't presented any houses yet.
I forgot about that.
Okay, well, I don't want to talk about the specific application, other than the fact that we were talking generally about renoticing. So usually we let them go 2 meetings. If they don't make it in 2 meetings, then we make them renotice.
This is the second one.
Right, this will be the second, this coming up. This is the second adjournment that we're doing, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, if they're not ready or they don't show up at the 9th meeting, they're going to have to renotice.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Anything else? Okay, motion to adjourn?
Move.
I hear a motion. From FSG, can I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.